January 3rd, 2026, 11:47 p.m. The Caribbean Sea is not dark. It is a canvas of kinetic energy painted with the invisible ink of high-frequency radiation and the rhythmic pulse of nuclear power. 200 miles off the coast of Caracas, the USS Gerald R moves through the water with the deliberate gravity of a predator that no longer needs to hide. The world, the media, the observers, the frantic intelligence officers on the mainland will call what is about to happen a raid. They will use the language of the 20th century, sudden, violent, a breach of sovereignty. But they are wrong. A raid implies a momentary puncture in a defensive line. What the Ford is executing is something far more profound. It is not an attack. It is the engineering of a new state of reality. In the high-stakes theater of modern geopolitics, we are taught that stealth is the ultimate currency. We believe that to insert a Delta Force team into the heart of a hostile capital, one must become a ghost. Silence, we assume, is the only shroud. But silence is brittle. Silence is an anomaly that attracts attention in a world that never stops humming. The architects of Operation Tooti 26 understood a deeper truth. Sometimes the optimal solution isn't to disappear. It is to flood the battle space with certainty. You do not need to be quiet if you can make the world so loud that the concept of quiet ceases to exist. This is the paradox of the sonic shield. We are not sneaking through the shadows. We are weaponizing tempo geometry and human perception until the background noise of American dominance becomes the only thing the enemy can hear. Think back to Panama 1989. The military blasted rock music to psychologically harass an entrenched enemy. It was effective, but it was crude, a blunt instrument of frustration. Tooti 26 is the evolution of that impulse, refined by the cold precision of 21st century physics. Every radar station in Venezuela is currently scanning the sky. Every listener is filtering frequencies, searching for the telltale sign of an intruder. They hear everything. And that is their fatal flaw. When the USS Ford pushes its systems to a surge tempo, it creates a ceaseless industrial roar that blankets the Caribbean. The sensors on the mainland aren't malfunctioning. They are being overloaded by an excess of normal information. They don't see an invasion. They see standard procedure. They see a superpower exercising its routine right to the horizon. And beneath that perfect deafening cover of familiarity, 4 Chinook helicopters are skimming the whitecaps, their rotor noise swallowed whole by the calculated chaos vibrating through the atmosphere. The Delta Force team isn't picking a lock. They are walking through the front door while the doorman has both hands pressed firmly over his ears, blinded by the very light he was trained to monitor. To understand how you turn the Caribbean into an acoustic prison, you must first understand the machine. The Ford is not just a ship. It is a displacement of 100,000 tons of diplomatic will powered by the A1B nuclear reactor. To maintain over 100 aircraft in a continuous unbroken orbit, you need a tempo that would have broken every carrier that came before. On a traditional Nimitz-class carrier, the rhythm of war is dictated by the physics of steam. You launch a jet and the system must breathe. The pipes must recharge. If you push too hard, the pressure drops, the catapults go soft, and $70 million of hardware slides into the ocean. The cycle is slow, a breath every few minutes. A stutter in the shield. But the Ford does not breathe. It flows. It uses the electromagnetic aircraft launch system EMALS. Think of it as a railgun for 30-ton fighters. Electricity flows through coils embedded in the deck, creating a magnetic wave that flings an F-35 from 0 to 170 miles per hour in 2 seconds. It recharges in 45 seconds. While the old steam systems needed 4 minutes to recover, EMALS is ready before the smoke from the last launch has even cleared the deck. The goal is a seamless conveyor belt of noise. One wave launches, another recovers. By the time the first squadron needs fuel, the second is already overhead, filling the acoustic gap. The Navy calls this the sortie generation rate. On this night, the Ford is hitting a tempo of 270 sorties per day. It is operational overmatch in its purest form. You are cycling aircraft faster than the human brain or the radar processing unit can track them. Yet the launch system is only the heart. The limbs of this operation are found in the geometry of the deck itself. On a standard carrier, rearming a jet is a cluttered, dangerous dance of wire rope elevators and manual labor. It is slow. Every minute a jet sits on the deck is a minute the sonic shield thins. The Ford's designers moved the island, the command tower further back, opening up the deck into a wide unobstructed plaza. They replaced the old cable elevators with advanced weapons elevators that run on electromagnetic rails. Ordnance doesn't wait in staging areas. It moves from the deep magazines directly to the wing of the aircraft at 150 feet per minute. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a total reimagining of the logistics of violence. We reduced the turnaround time from 40 minutes to 22. Multiply those 18 saved minutes by 100 aircraft, and you have gained 1,800 minutes of operational presence. That is how you sustain a shield. You don't just fly faster, you eliminate the friction of being human. As the clock strikes midnight, the Ford sits at exactly 380 nautical miles northeast of Caracas. This is not a random position. The F-35C has a combat radius of 770 miles. At 380 miles, the aircraft can reach the capital loiter for 90 minutes of overwatch and return with a safety margin of fuel. It is the perfect mathematical intersection of reach and endurance. Around the carrier, the Arleigh Burke destroyers sit at the 12, 3, 6 and 9 o'clock positions exactly 50 miles out. They form a diamond of overlapping radar. Every cubic foot of airspace for 500 miles is being watched, catalogued and controlled. Every time a Venezuelan Su-30 pilot even thinks about warming up his engines, the strike group knows. Within 18 seconds of his wheels leaving the tarmac, he would find 12 American fighters already vectored toward his position. He doesn't fight. He turns around and lands. This is the definition of a naval quarantine. You don't have to invade the airspace if you make entering it feel like an act of suicide. And still the noise continues. The clockwise rotation of the fleet isn't just for defense. It is for the thermodynamics of fuel. By flying in circular patterns with the prevailing winds, we reduce fuel consumption by 11%. Over 6 hours, that saves nearly 300,000 pounds of fuel, enough for an extra 90 minutes of dominance. The geometry isn't just tactical, it is logistical insurance. In the streets of Caracas, the Delta team moves through a city that feels abandoned, lit only by the flickering orange of aging street lamps. To the locals, the sky is just a low, heavy rumble, a storm that never breaks. But to the operators, the world is glowing. They aren't looking at the darkness, they are looking at the data. 40,000 feet above them, the F-35s are painting the city in three-dimensional radar energy. The humidity of the Caribbean, which usually blinds radar with evaporation ducting, is irrelevant to the Ford. Its dual-band radar slices through the moist air, filtering out the ghosts and the refractors that hide smaller ships. The enemy thinks the geography is their ally. They think the islands and the heat will mask their movements. They are wrong. We have turned the very atmosphere into a lens, and through that lens we are watching the target move toward the extraction point. The stage is set. The noise is constant, the mathematics are perfect, but as the Delta team nears the objective, the calculated calm of the mission is about to meet the friction of the ground. The rumble over Caracas isn't just a sound, it is a weight. At 1:14 a.m., the Delta Force operators reach the perimeter of the target compound. In the world of conventional warfare, this is the moment of maximum vulnerability, the point where the long tail of logistics must finally meet the sharp end of the spear. But the spear isn't alone. Above the clouds, the F-35C pilots are managing a flood of data that would have paralyzed an entire command center a decade ago. Every sensor on the aircraft, from the distributed aperture system DAS to the APG-81 radar, is fused into a single coherent picture. The pilot doesn't see radar returns or thermal signatures. They see the battlefield as a living, breathing entity. Behind this digital clarity lies the raw thrumming power of the ship 380 miles away. The A1B reactor on the Ford isn't just a propulsion system. It is a 13,800 volt power plant. By stripping away the miles of steam piping that haunted the Nimitz-class carriers, the Navy removed the friction of maintenance. In its place, they installed pure electrical potential. This voltage powers the eyes of the fleet. When the Delta team requests a look around the next corner, they aren't waiting for a satellite to pass overhead. They are receiving a live thermal feed updated every 1.2 seconds, beamed from a jet that is essentially a flying supercomputer. However, geography remains a stubborn master. While the F-35s from the Ford provide the sledgehammer of Overwatch, the 380-mile distance creates a lag in physical intervention. If the extraction goes hot, 28 minutes, the flight time for a jet from the Ford is a lifetime. This is where the calculation of risk becomes a masterpiece of layered defense. 80 miles closer to the Venezuelan coast, shrouded in radio silence, sits the USS Bataan. It is smaller, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, but its deck carries a different kind of miracle, the F-35B. To understand the Batan's role, one must understand the violent physics of the F-35B's lift fan. Unlike the C variant on the Ford, which relies on the electromagnetic catapult to reach flight speed, the B variant creates its own reality. Behind the pilot's seat sits a massive fan connected to the main engine by a carbon fiber drive shaft. When the pilot engages the hover mode, a clutch must transfer 29,000 horsepower, the equivalent of 40 Formula 1 cars, to that fan in a heartbeat. The aircraft balances on a 40,000-pound pillar of thrust, allowing it to leap off the deck of the Batan without the need for a catapult or a headwind. Because the Batan is positioned just 80 miles from the target, these jump jets reduce the response time from 28 minutes to 11. In the calculus of special operations, those 17 minutes are the difference between a clean extraction and a televised disaster. We have traded the long-range endurance of the Ford for the immediate violent proximity of the Batan. It is a dagger held at the throat of the city, hidden beneath the roar of the sledgehammer. At 2:42 a.m., the target is secured. The Delta team begins the movement back to the extraction zone, but the certainty we engineered starts to fray. On the ground, the Venezuelan internal security forces, confused, defend, but finally reacting, begin to mobilize. They don't know what is in the sky, but they know something is wrong in the streets. The sonic shield is now being tested. It is one thing to hide a movement, it is another to protect a retreat. The noise from the Ford's jets intensifies, the tempo of the sorties increases. On the flight deck, the 19-year-old technicians are moving with mechanical precision, their lives measured in 45-second intervals. If a single catapult fails, if a single elevator jams, the rhythm breaks. If the rhythm breaks, the silence returns. And in the silence, the Venezuelan defenders will hear the Chinooks. The weight of the mission now rests on the shoulders of teenagers from the American Midwest, performing high-speed physics problems in the dark, humid air of the Atlantic. They aren't thinking about geopolitics. They are thinking about the 13,800 volts humming beneath their boots and the next jet that needs to be flung into the night. The extraction is contested. The first rounds are fired. The world is about to find out if mathematics can truly replace the need for destruction. 3:11 a.m. The threshold of the mission shifts from deception to survival. The streets of Caracas are no longer just quiet corridors. They are a maze of escalating friction. As the Delta team reaches the extraction point with the high-value target in tow, the Venezuelan security forces begin to saturate the perimeter. They are moving blindly, but they are moving in force. The sonic shield has done its job. It bought the hours of darkness, and to transition from a ghost movement to a physical extraction is where the math meets the blood. A flash of light erupts 3 blocks from the landing zone. A shoulder-fired rocket streaks toward the sky, missing a hovering drone, but signaling that the enemy has stopped trying to understand the noise and has started fighting the shadows. Above them, the F-35s from the USS Batan are already on station. They had arrived exactly 11 minutes after the first distress signal was pulsed. They are not using their cannons. They are using their presence. One pilot drops his aircraft through a layer of clouds, engaging the lift fan, just enough to scream low over the advancing ground convoy. The sheer physical pressure of 40,000 pounds of thrust hitting the pavement at Mach 0.8 isn't just a sound, it is a concussive force that shatters windows and sends unarmored vehicles careening off the road. This is the dagger in action. The Batan's jets are the immediate response, the violent interruption of the enemy's OOD, a loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. While the Venezuelan commanders are trying to coordinate a response to the ghost jets, they can't see on radar. They are being physically suppressed by the ones they can feel in their chests. By 3:28 a.m., the sledgehammer arrives. The F-35Cs from the Ford, having flown the 380-mile transit, establish a secondary tier of overwatch. This is layered deterrence. If the Venezuelan Air Force manages to scramble an interceptor from a remote inland base, they aren't facing a lone team on the ground. They are facing a wall of networked steel. The beauty of the operation lies in the restraint. Not a single American bomb is dropped, not a single missile is fired from the Ford's VLS cells. The mission's success is defined by the absence of rubble. The United States didn't need to level a city block to capture a head of state. It simply had to dominate the variables of time and space so thoroughly that resistance became mathematically futile. As the Chinooks lift off their rotors, finally cutting through the humid air toward the safety of the fleet, the sonic shield begins its final phase, the withdrawal. On the deck of the Ford, the pace hasn't slackened. The 19-year-old from Wisconsin, his face smeared with grease and salt, watches as the 100th jet of the night catches the arresting wire. The electromagnetic recovery system, AAG, absorbs the kinetic energy of the landing fighter with the same silent digital precision that launched it 6 hours ago. The shield doesn't just vanish, it fades. The carrier strike group begins a slow clockwise egress, maintaining the radar diamond, keeping the acoustic prison intact until the helicopters are well beyond the reach of any coastal defense battery. The sun begins to bleed over the horizon of the Atlantic. The operation is over. The target is in a holding cell below decks. The 13800 volt hum of the A1B reactor continues steady and indifferent, powering the morning coffee for 5,000 sailors who just rewrote the rules of modern conflict. War in this new era is no longer a contest of who can explode the most material. It is a contest of who can best manage the information of the universe. We use the physics of the Caribbean against itself. We use the logistics of the EMALS to outpace the enemy's ability to think. We used sound to create silence. The United States doesn't need to occupy your capital. We can simply render your defense irrelevant from 380 miles away using nothing more than a few billion electrons and the unwavering discipline of a crew that understands that in the 21st century the most powerful weapon is the one that never has to fire. Sleep well. The math has been done. The watch is set.